Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining tonight's live stream. I didn't give anyone a heads up just because I was just inspired to go live tonight. One is just it's been on my heart to remind people about ways we can hire better, things we need to keep in mind, especially because right now is probably a season of a lull that you're going through right now with your recruiting. I know in most places, the hiring season is not super heavy. So if you are in a lull of your hiring season, this conversation is perfect for you. But if you're not in a lull, this conversation is even better for you because you want to make sure you're keeping these things in mind. So if you are joining live, say hey to me in the comments. I would love to say hey to you back. If you're watching the replay, hit say replay down in the comments as well. I would love to be able to connect with you, to be able to circle back and engage with you in the comments as well. So tonight I'm going to be talking about the benefits of having an applicant tracking system. So for those of you who are new to what an applicant tracking system is, it's really a system, a software that you use to help you to organize your recruiting process. So for example, if you're newer to HR, if you've been in the HR industry for under 5 years, especially if you're leading an HR department, if depending on what your predecessor had in place, if you had a predecessor, you may or may not have an applicant tracking system. And so when I was early in my career, which was, back in 2008, we did not have an applicant tracking system. I think I implemented one back in 2000, maybe 2012, 2014, somewhere around there. So I've had an applicant tracking system for years and years and years. I know the benefits of it. And what I like about applicant tracking systems, you can also customize them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But tonight, I want to make sure you are aware of what an applicant tracking system is and how you can utilize it to make your recruiting process even more effective. So I think this is a very important conversation to have because right now we are in record numbers when it comes to people leaving organizations. Employees are leaving every single day at rates of 4 million employees leaving their jobs every single month. So we're in a bit of a crisis, but I feel we're coming out of it in a way. And if you go anywhere, if you go to Target, if you go to Outback, if you go anywhere, you're likely going to see that the people that are working are short-staffed. And so whatever you're facing in your organization is nothing that's unique to you. We're all experiencing the same things. But our best thing that we can do to make sure we are not in this season all alone and consistently is to make sure we're doing better with our recruiting. I say it all the time. If you're doing the same things over and over again and you're not happy with the results that you're getting, the best thing that you can do is at least examine and figure out what are some things you can do differently to get different results. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. How you can, if you don't have an applicant tracking system, maybe you should consider getting one. And if you do have one, let's make sure you're utilizing it in the right way as well. So let me pull up my notes here. Again, if you are joining live, please say hey to me in the comments. I would love to engage with you. Tonight, again, we're talking about how to make the best use of your applicant tracking system. So before I had an applicant tracking system in place, I was still kind of early in my HR Department of One journey. And I remember feeling overwhelmed with the number of applicants that I had. And back then, we probably had maybe 1 or 2 positions open, a month, which was nothing compared to right now in my organization. We have maybe 5 to 7 positions open every single month, consistently hiring. And so I say this to say it's important to make sure that you do the things now because where you are right now is not always going to be the way it is. For example, if I rested all those years back when we only had 1 and 2 positions open, I would be pulling my hair out today if I hadn't already put those systems in place. So again, whether you're in a lull season, whether you are constantly recruiting, wherever you are right now within your journey of HR, you want to make sure you are doing the things to build in systems and build in processes to make sure you're being more effective. It's going to serve your career in the future as well. So at one point, I had gotten to the point where I had enough. Because when you're recruiting, you're doing all the work. You're calling the people, you're setting up interviews, you're bringing them to the hiring team, and then you get them in the interview. And the hiring team is not impressed. The hiring team does not think that he's a great candidate. The hiring team starts questioning you and your abilities. And so when you're in this season of figuring out, okay, well, who we're going to bring to the table, first of all, we're dealing with an applicant pool that is very aggressive, and not aggressive in a bad way, but they have options. And so they don't have to take the first offer that comes to them. And so for that reason, it requires us as HR Department of One professionals, HR department professionals in general to make sure we are doing what we can to make sure that the experience of the candidate is more positive, is more transparent. You want to make sure you're giving people as much information as they need to make an informed decision. So back then, again, I got so frustrated and I'd had enough. I knew there had to be a better way to do this. It's going about scheduling interviews and organizing things with notepads and spreadsheets and sticky notes and just trying to keep it all straight using so many different methods of organization. I knew there had to be a better way, but I didn't really know what there was. And so I started Googling, I started looking, and I came across an applicant tracking system platform, one that I now partner with. And I love, love, love working with this platform for applicant tracking because it helps me to not only have all of my applicants in a central location, but it also helps me to make sure that I am able to communicate with them. If they prefer email or if they prefer text, then I can email them or text them directly within the system. I can put in screener questions to kind of disqualify people out of the runnings for a certain position. I can make sure that there are screener questions in place. I can make sure that I can check the status of people's history if they apply more than one time. Again, having an applicant tracking system, there are so many things that you can do to streamline your hiring process. So I want to make sure you are aware of the things that you can have in place to make sure you are working more effectively. So I want to make sure. So for me, the reason why I think this is a very important conversation is because when you're an HR department of one, you're balancing multiple priorities. So recruiting is not your only function. There are some people who are a recruiter, and there are some people who are a talent acquisition specialist. But you as an HR department of one, you do everything. You're processing payroll likely. You're handling benefits. You're doing workplace investigations. You're dealing with employee issues. You're handling employee engagement activities. You're doing everything. And so recruiting can often take a lot of your time, especially if you have a lot of positions open. And so for this reason, it's important to make sure you have processes around the way you do things, the way you hire, the way you bring people in, the way you interview people, the way you onboard people. All those things are going to play into making sure you protect your peace and you streamline your processes so that you can be more effective. So for me, when I was solo, again, I implemented my applicant tracking system at that point. And it benefited me then because I was able to save time. I was able to save my energy. But even as my department grew, so again, I was previously in HR department one, but I'm not now. So right now I lead 3 departments. I lead HR, which outside of myself is a team of 2. I lead compliance, which is another team of 2. And I lead training and development, which is a team of 2. And so because I implemented the applicant tracking system when I was a team of 1, I made it what I wanted it to be. I built it inside and out. The statuses I created, the screening questions I created, I worked alongside with someone who was helping me to onboard that process. So as my department grew, the people who came into the department, they could just fall in line with what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Of course, we're making incremental changes over time to make anything better. But again, you want to make sure you're doing the hard things now, because just because you're in this season of your career right now, that's not where you're going to always be. So always think of things ahead of the game. Don't ever think of things just as far as next week or even next month or even next year. It's a long game when you're working in HR, especially when you're working by yourself in HR. So keep that in mind. So these are what I call the benefits of using an applicant tracking system. And these are the reasons why you want to make sure that if you don't have an applicant tracking system, you want to make sure you get one now. And if you do have an applicant tracking system, you want to make sure that you're able to do the things I'm going to talk about. And you want to make sure you are using it to its fullest capacity. I think we're all guilty of getting processes, of getting systems, getting softwares, and using it for this amount of things it can do. And we're all guilty. A phone that you buy, a car that you buy, you do just enough, or you know just enough to get you from point A to point B. But we don't always turn on all the bells and whistles. So let this be a reminder to you that if I'm talking about things today that you're not utilizing your own applicant tracking system, make sure that it can do the things that I'm talking about. But also, if you don't have one, let me know and click the link in the comments below also so you can get my highest recommendation for what I believe is my favorite applicant tracking system. So the first benefit of an applicant tracking system is it saves you time. Like I said before, when you're working in HR, especially when you're working by yourself in HR, recruiting is not your only function. you've got a lot of things to do when you're working in HR. And so you've got to make sure that with your limited time and your limited resources that you use it wisely. I talked about that in a prior video about making sure you use your time and how to function as an HR department of one when you have so many things to do and dueling priorities. And recruiting is no different. So you've got to make sure that you are able to save your time. And how can you save your time with applicant tracking system? Like I said before, you can set statuses. So in my organization, what we do is we set up statuses so that when we review an applicant, we can say reviewed. Or if an applicant doesn't show for an interview, we put no call, no show. Because especially if they apply for another position, I want to know when they apply next year, 2 years from now, next week. I want to know that they didn't even show up for the last interview that I scheduled them for. So if either I'm going to decide to not call them, or I'm going to call them and say, hey, we scheduled an interview with you before. What happened? Why didn't you show? I mean, people have things that happen. We're going to give people grace, but I think it's important to have all the information that you need to make better decisions as you're going about your processes. You can also save time by making sure you have different screeners put in place. For example, if you're hiring for a job that requires a certain level of education or a certain number of years within a certain industry or profession or leadership, you can add questions around those type of things. And if a person answers in a certain way, that'll disqualify them. You'll still see their application, but it'll put them in another category. So you can go and watch them and look at them. But then also you can say, well, either you can still look at this person to move forward or not. But it helps you to streamline your process and save your time because it helps you to kind of take away the applicants that don't quite meet what you're looking for. And then once you get through the best of the best, you can kind of circle back and look at all the applicants. I never recommend to just not look at any applicants or not look at certain applicants that have a certain criteria that they don't meet. Because sometimes people misspeak, sometimes people mistype, they misclick. So you want to look at every single application. But doing this helps you to at least look at the top candidates first, and then you can also look at the rest of them later. The next benefit and why I think you need to make sure you're utilizing an applicant tracking system is it helps you to hire better, faster. Helps you to make easier hiring decisions. One of the things I love about the current applicant tracking system that I use right now is it allows you to add assessments for different jobs. So say, for example, if there's a certain assessment for a bookkeeping position or a collections position or a customer service position, you can add different questionnaires to the application process so that it helps you to know, okay, well, this person, they know all the right things to say, but the great thing I like about this one is it tells you how candid this person is. So this person is a 99 out of 100 on all the answers. Any other assessment, you'll think, okay, well, they're great. But if their candidness is a 0, that means they're kind of lying throughout the entire thing. And this applicant tracking system allows you to make sure you are adding that type of value to the application so that you can make better hiring decisions, especially when you're asking your hiring team to trust your feedback, to trust your recommendations. It's important that they know all that you put into making these decisions, all that you put into making sure that they get the best person on their team. Because you don't want to be hiring people just because you've got other things to do. And they should know that as well. My biggest piece is it helps you to stay organized. And organization is key when you're working by yourself in HR. One of the big ways it helps you stay organized is that you have a single hub for all of your applications. You don't have to worry about printing out and dealing with things that have been mailed in and having this over here in this folder and this over here in this file. You have a single hub for all your applications, all your resumes, all your questionnaires, all the prior applications. And if you decide to print them out, then you know that those are going to be the ones that you move forward with. But even if you don't print them out, you have a single space for all of your applications. And it has historical data as well. So again, as you're moving forward and you're figuring out what you need to look for in your applicant tracking system, these are the things and these are the ways that can help you to make better decisions, to stay organized, and just stay on top of your day. Also, I feel like it's going to also help you to communicate more effectively and easily. So like I said before, the person puts on their application that they prefer to be emailed or they prefer to be text. One thing that I feel like our recruiters, what we feel right now is we're being ghosted a lot. Like I said before, applicants have choices. And because of that, they want to make sure that they get the position that they want to get. But in order to reach them, people aren't always answering their phones. So I know I won't answer a phone number that I don't recognize. If I was looking for a job, maybe I would, but I don't typically answer calls that I don't recognize. But I pretty much read every text message. Whether I respond to it or not, I read every text message. And our applicants are no different. So again, as you're doing things like you're building different systems and building different processes, you got to do not only what works for you, but what works best for your candidates as well. Candidate experience is everything. And we'll talk about that in a prior video or a later video because that's a completely different conversation. But candidate experience is a really big piece that you don't want to leave out of the equation. If this all sounds interesting to you, later on in a few weeks, I'll be hosting a challenge on how to hire better, faster, all the things you need to know to make sure you are building foundational knowledge in terms of what to know when you're recruiting, how to recruit, how to onboard people, how to build strong teams, and how to make sure you're setting up your systems in place to make sure you are making better decisions. If there's been anything that I've been able to help you with today, feel free to leave that comment below. Let me know what your biggest aha moment was. Let me know if you're using an applicant tracking system, if you're not using an applicant tracking system, and why or why not. I'm curious to know if there's anything that I could do to help you and serve you in the future. And if you want to skip the line on the applicant tracking system challenge, feel free to click that link in the comments below as well. And you can actually book your demo call for my favorite applicant tracking system. It's my highest recommendation. I think you will love it as well. If I can serve you at a higher level in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye.